Good afternoon. This is Grant Swartzwelder with another episode of The Grown-Up Table. Welcome to what I think will prove to be a very fascinating discussion, again, focused on conversations on life and character. Let's set the table right from the start. In previous episode, you heard me talk to Amy Downs, who experienced the explosion at the Murrow building in Oklahoma City. From that very traumatic event, she ended up changing her life, transforming her life into something very, very different. Well, today's guest and topic is to really show that you don't have to be involved in an explosion or something as catastrophic as that to really affect your life. We're fortunate today to have Christie Linebarger, who is an author of a new book called Stick Your Beak in the Ground. She's also has 25 years of experience as a director of talent acquisition. These things really play, I think, nicely together because her personal experience looking and talking to individuals, interviewing, seeing how they respond, I think has really helped form this book and the points that come across in it. Talking about just showing up, talking about transformation, talking about creating a meaningful life. All of those things were things that Amy talked about, but it's nice to know that you don't have to be caught up in a building explosion to make that happen. So welcome, Christie, and I really appreciate you being here to talk about this. Let's start talking about your book right from the beginning and explain to me what came across your experience. I know you had your own traumatic event called a layoff, which pales in comparison, but I think that helped, but then also just your experience. What's the book about? What's the goal of the book?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. I'm a big fan of the Grown-Up Table. Well, I'm excited to have finally been promoted to the Grown-Up Table and to be here today. So
you would never be thought of being at the kids' table. You were always in the Grown-Up Table. You were just maybe off camera.
Off camera. All right. So Stick Your Beak in the Ground. It seems like a story about me writing a book, but it actually is an interesting story about how hard things can happen in life, but how they can be wake-up calls and really be the thing that gets us to an even better place than we could have imagined. So my story and the story of Stick Your Beak in the Ground started on May 9th of 2025 when my company had a layoff, like you said. I'm in human resources, so I knew we were having a layoff. I knew that we would have a lot of people that were impacted.
But not you.
But not me. I had no idea that my team, for the most part, would just, not exist after that day. My peers in human resources. I liken it to getting a divorce decree. Hey, it's not you, it's me. And then they changed the locks. So May 9th, got a call, was working on projects, working on things, and then I couldn't access anything. And, coming after Amy Downs as a guest on your show, nothing so traumatic, but for me, it was really hard because, being laid off, but my husband was also unemployed and had been for a while. So I had a bit of a panic moment. There's a grieving that goes on. First of all, just the shock, the anger, right? The anxiety, the worry. Not are we going to have benefits? What's going to happen? What's going to happen next? So in the midst of my grieving, I find writing to be very cathartic. I've been a writer for a while, not as an author, but I've had a blog for a while and I write a lot on LinkedIn. So I started writing some articles on LinkedIn, more as therapy for myself, but I was finding that other people who had been laid off, because this has been a crazy year of layoffs, people were drawn to it and encouraged by it. So one day I wrote about this phrase that I've used with my team, stick your beak in the ground, which sounds like such a quirky thing to say. But so let me explain the premise behind it.
On the face of it, it's hard to understand, but please explain because it makes a lot of sense.
Right. And it's not sticking your head in the sand. It's sticking your beak in the ground, which is completely different. So think about the bird. The bird wakes up every morning, doesn't have the luxury of going to the refrigerator to get food, going to the pantry, going down to the local Starbucks to, get your iced lemon pound cake. they have to get up and they have to stick their beak in the ground. They have to get to work to survive every day. They can get up and maybe they've stuck their beak in the ground looking for their worm for an hour and they find it. Maybe 8 hours later, they still are without, right? But they get up every day and they get to work. And this is really how it is in life. So I liken it as recruiters, which is my career and profession. We know that there are candidates out there and we have to go find them. And sometimes we look for them for an hour and we find the right candidate. Sometimes 2 weeks later, we're still looking for the right candidate to fill our job. But life is like this too, right? Like we have to get up every morning and we have to dig through the challenges that life presents.
And you bring up an interesting point. As a recruiter or talent acquisition, you've got to use these skills to do your job. But I've got to believe also that you're looking for an individual that possesses a lot that you write about.
Right.
And I interview folks, I hire folks, and finding someone that will match a lot of these skills of tenacity and pursuit of excellence. We could spend a whole long time on how do you find that in a person.
Right. That's another seating at the grown-up table.
Yeah.
But I think the more you possess these things and the more you live this way with determination as a resilient person, as somebody that isn't afraid of the unknown and isn't afraid of rejection, you can more easily find that in other people. So from a recruiting perspective, that's been great. As somebody who was searching for a job, I had to make the decision every morning to get up and get to work, right? Like I could have just sat around my house and, stuffed my mouth with Cheez-Its or had too much wine and,
Sure.
and felt sorry for myself. But really it was a decision every morning to get up and get to work, not knowing, when this would be resolved, when I would get a new job, what that would look like,
Mm-hmm.
and not being afraid of the unknown, but being somebody that was committed
Let's
to
dig
finding
in that
it.
a little bit because that sounds great. I just get up and get going.
Yeah.
But that's the hard part, I think, is if you've got an addiction, if you need to find a job, getting that plan, getting that start. How do you do that?
Yeah. Let's put addiction aside because I think
Sure.
addiction, depression, I want to talk about those as well because those are very real things, especially.
Sure. And that has chemical and others. So
Right.
some of this is more of just how to get
Yeah.
started with your pursuit of excellence, your pursuit of a job, whatever you're trying to do.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's, a big thing like finding a job. Sometimes maybe you're studying for the bar exam, right? Like maybe you have a big goal ahead of you. Sometimes it's just getting through daily life, right?
Sure.
Like a stay-at-home mom that is, doing laundry and packing clothes or packing lunches and folding clothes and taking care of everybody else during the day. Sometimes that's hard to get up and do too. So I think in every context of our lives, we have to dig in and make this decision. And it's hard for everyone, right? My 14-year-old had a math test today. She had to study for it. She had to get up and stick her beak in the ground and, every morning and, every night to prepare for this. But you're right. I think one of the hard things is that, especially if, like in my case, looking for a job, you're thinking about the end goal. But the end goal is a series of very small decisions and very small achievements that you make along the way. So I think one of the first thing is not waking up saying, I have to find a job today, or I have to, run a marathon today, or I have to do this big thing. That's very overwhelming, right?
Definitely.
People that want to lose weight, I have to lose 100 pounds. You don't wake up one morning saying, I have to lose how many ever pounds. You start with the smallest achievements, right? For me, it wasn't like I have to find a job today. It is, I have to get up and I have to see what's out there. I'm going to make one call to someone today. You can start with just the smallest achievements. And
Admiral McCraven, head of UT, has a book, and it's called Make Your Bed. And that's the first thing he does that day. That way he has accomplished something.
Right.
And it's a very simple task that is doable. So it kind of fits with what you're describing.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think there were days where just getting up and like taking a shower seemed like a win.
You'd much rather wallow in your whatever.
With clean hair. Than,
exactly.
Exactly.
So
at least look good while you're. But I do think we get very overwhelmed focusing on kind of the end goal or the resolution instead of breaking it down into the smallest things. And, let's say you want to lose weight, right? Like sometimes just have one healthy thing for breakfast, right? Is that going to change the number on the scale? Probably not. But it's proof to yourself that you are somebody that can do hard things.
Yep. And I think that point of the process is so important because in today's world, like, for example, we had a previous podcast on why are college kids coddled. And a lot of that is they expect success immediately. And what you're describing is a process of putting in the work to actually get there. And yes, it's a lot more work and effort, but the chance of success, as opposed to hoping it just is magically given to you, there's a lot better chance of using your process.
Well, and I love instant gratification. I think this is the era that we live in, right? We get things immediately. We don't like to wait. And I think if you can, work smarter and instead of harder, I think that's a great thing. But you don't want to live life in a microwaved society, right? Like you don't want to live a microwaved life, I should say. Some things take time and they have to simmer. And even to be able
to start to work smarter, that comes from years of experience that allows you to be that smarter.
Right.
And people kind of forget that there are dues that you pay to get to that point.
Absolutely. But I think also there's this becoming that happens. And it's one thing that I really tried to focus on in the book that, we're always focused on the end goal. We're always focused on crossing the finish line. But really what happens when you're out sticking your beak in the ground is this process of becoming. And if you get everything quickly and easily, you're not developing those muscles that make you somebody who is resilient and determined. If you don't ever face rejection, if you don't have to, find that grit inside of you that makes you get up and do hard things every day, you lose this process of becoming. And I think, life is a piece of art that has to be chiseled, and that just takes time, but there's beauty that comes, there's strength that comes with that.
When you're talking about process, it makes me think of a quote from the book talking about consistency leading to character. When you choose to show up consistently, you become reliable. And you become reliable to yourself, it seems like, but also to other people.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's really like these muscles that you're flexing, and it proves to yourself that you are somebody that maybe you didn't know you were. But it also, people see the change in you. People see that you're becoming and you are, more responsible, or they see that you're accountable. And so it doesn't just change who you are, but it changes how you're perceived as well, and how you're
becoming
seen.
Kind of a model for other folks. You're becoming the example, which doesn't seem like there's quite enough on like that.
Right.
So it's the other part when you talk about process. It's interesting. You had a section in the book talking about doing the hard stuff and not. Let me paraphrase, and then you can correct me because I'm sure I'll get it wrong. But it's like not avoiding it and almost intentionally looking for it so that you can achieve that. Explain that thought,
right?
Because it seems like you'd want to avoid the hard stuff.
Wouldn't life be great if we could? Right. And the reality of life is that we can't avoid the hard stuff because life is hard, right? But I think when you see it as not something to be afraid of, or not something that is, a resistance against you, but something that opens new doors for you to become a person who's stronger, or maybe it just shows you who you've been all along, right? Like the hard situations show us who we're made, what we're made of and who we are. I do have a chapter in the book, Stick Your Beak in the Ground, Not Your Head in the Sand, which is a beautiful title that my friend Rachel Blanton kind of just handed to me. I think we spend a lot of time in life, or we have it's our natural tendency, right, to avoid hard things and just stick our head in the sand and hope that the world goes by without us, and then we can wake up and all those hard things are gone, which is not the case, right? You could stick your head in the sand, all the hard things are still there. But if you can find the grit and the determination inside you to get up every morning and just get to work, you'll see a strength inside of you, or have the chance to build that.
I use a phrase that my wife hates when I use, but it talks about when I'm looking for someone with half a brain, but a lot of want to. And the point of that is a lot of the tasks aren't that difficult. You just have to have the motivation and the tenacity to go and either research it or execute on that.
I would add curiosity to that, right?
Yep.
Curiosity and motivation, that's a superpower right there, and can overcome maybe lack of knowledge.
We see some of our employees that if they come across the first answer, then they're done. They don't have that curiosity or the drive to find if there's another option that might be better.
That tenacity, that hunger for more.
So it's one of the other quotes that I really liked in yours is you did a quote from Martin Luther King talking about if a man is called to be a street sweeper, then he should sweep. Oh, this is a tongue twister there. He should sweep streets as if Michelangelo painted or Beethoven composed music. And I thought that's another thing that seems to be missing, the pursuit of excellence and pride in everything you do.
Right.
Describe what you're trying to get to there.
Well, I think we live in a world of comparison. Social media has made that just, exacerbated, right? Like we look around at other people, and it's easy to either feel more important than people, or more often than not feel like maybe what you're doing isn't as good or isn't as important. We all have a calling in life, and we are all called to whatever it is that our place in this grand story is, to do it with excellence. Because if you're not going to do it excellently, why do it, right? Like if this is your part, play your part with excellence. Go big, right?
Yeah. And this almost you're talking big, but even the small things, like in my office, just proofreading what you're about to send out, having the pride to do the little details, to do the excellence so that you represent yourself well and you represent the company well.
Right. And I think being someone of excellence is not something that you're born with. It's something that you have to work toward. I do think that in our world, we look for shortcuts. We look for the easy way. We look for the quick way. And that's okay. Sometimes that makes sense sometimes. But, if we take it back to like the bird sticking its beak in the ground, there are times where it rains. And, when it rains, the worms come to the surface and the bird doesn't have to work very hard to find the worm, which is great, right? But a lot of people spend their life praying for rain because they only know those shortcuts. They don't know how to get in and do the work and do it excellently and do it well. And in the dry days, it's only the people that are committed to the work and committed to excellence that are going to find their worm, so to speak.
Right. So do you think that this is something you learned? This isn't something God gave you at birth?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Thank you.
It's probably a little bit of both.
There you go. That's a nice, easy way out of that.
Yes, that's the diplomatic answer, the political answer right there. I mean, I do think that everybody has the ability to be someone who is determined and finds the will and finds the drive and is resilient. Do we do it? I mean,
It starts dropping off pretty quick.
It does, right? Like,
and then doing it and how much you do it and how committed you are to it, that seems like that's a training or a character development.
It takes time. And I also think that you have to find the value in what it is that you're working toward also, right? Like I use the story, and I think I wrote about it in the book, that if I told my girls that they were going to get $1 million, but they had to get up at 3:00 in the morning and go stand in line, I mean, they would be there, long before the lines opened,
Sure.
ready to go, because what was waiting for them was valuable enough. But to get my, 14-year-old up on time to get to school, that is the hardest thing I do every day.
Well, a lot of what you're talking about are kind of intangibles and character development, and again, longer out.
Right.
And that's harder to get satisfaction out of, as opposed to having a brand new item that you just got because you stood in line.
Absolutely. So I do think you have to look in life and understand the why and find the value, because there are things that aren't worth sticking your beak in the ground for. There are things that, like, it's a lot of work and the payoff maybe isn't there. So I think you do have to really evaluate your why and understand, the payoff. And, let's go back to that example of losing weight, right? Like, if it's just something you're like, oh, probably should do this. Are you going to work that hard at it? Not if you're not committed, not if you don't see the value, right? But if you see the value and you understand the why, then you're going to be more inclined to do the hard things and overcome obstacles to reach your goal.
So the other problem with what you're describing as a process longer term is that gives you more opportunity for rejection and hardships along the way.
It does.
Because it's that steady flow. So how do you handle that? How do you overcome that type of rejection?
Yeah, and rejection is hard. And as somebody who looked for a job for many, many months, hearing that no, I mean, if anybody tells you that no is not a hard word, like, they're either jaded or they're lying, right? Like,
well, it's hard for us to be perfect and hear the word no. That's not.
I mean, we all can't be you, Grant.
Well,
so.
All right. And
I've heard no a whole lot of times in my life. So
something to strive for, everyone. So it's.
We can all strive for that. Rejection is hard. No is hard. So I do think that you have to shift the narrative on the no. A couple of things that no can do for you. And anytime you get a no or you get that rejection, process it, because feelings are feelings. That's our reality. Every time I heard back from an interview and they decided not to hire me, that was hard to hear.
Sure.
But no can be the catalyst to get us to keep going. Like, it's kind of that rebellion against the no, right? Like, well, I'll show you. You gave me a no. I'll show you that I'm going to get a yes, right? And you find that fire in your belly. Mm-hmm. Be somebody that uses the no as a catalyst to keep going. But I also think you have to listen to the no. The no is information. Rejection truly is information. It's like a guide on your journey. If the bird sticks its beak in the ground and it keeps hitting concrete, it's not going to keep digging there. It's going to go dig different dirt. And so you really have to evaluate, is the no, like, is this intended to be the fire to keep going? Or is it the universe or God or, whatever you listen to saying, hey, this isn't the right road for you animour?
There could be another route.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Well, and I had a person at A&M basically tell me that I would never be able to go to graduate school at this top tier. And I had the same. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But that was a driver for me to go. Now, but then you start kind of in your head, it's like, am I going just so I could prove him wrong, or is this the right thing for me? And that's a hard, what is your motivation and why are you doing that?
It goes back to that figuring out, what is the payoff for me? And is it going to, is this really what I want to do? Yeah.
So you mentioned God in there. So that here's our segue. I know you and your family are really based in your religion and spirituality and God. How does faith fit into this? Kind of your process, but also the process that we're talking about, and we've talked about several things.
Yeah. I think for me, I am really, really rooted in my faith in God. And so that really impacts just about everything I do. I think there's some optimism for me, there's absolute optimism and hope that comes from faith. And, and hearing Amy Downs, your previous guest, talk about her faith, what I experienced was nowhere near as traumatic as what she experienced. But, I do think with a layoff, with a husband who's unemployed, there's a panic that comes there.
Sure.
And the first response, I think, is naturally like, God, why are you doing this to me? But I think knowing from my own faith that we have a good God. And, we can say everything happens for a reason. The Bible says our steps are ordered. So however you subscribe to that thought, I believe that God has written a really good story for us. And my chapter ended very abruptly and unexpectedly. And so I had to look and say, okay, you're taking me on an adventure. Like, where are we going? And so anytime that I got to the point where I was scared or concerned about, finances or benefits, or would I ever get a job again, I had to redirect myself and ask the question, okay, God, what do you have up your sleeve for me? So I do think for me, that faith led me to a place of adventure and optimism and hope versus feeling very alone.
But what provides that? Is it because there is a consistency with people I'm talking to that have a spiritual basis for it, and it might not be God; it could be whoever's God, but it's a spirituality.
Right?
Is it just a comfort, or is it it kind of a motivation, or kind of someone supporting you? What is that really? Why is it that important? What is it that's really helping?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the one time in life that I like to look in the rearview mirror. I don't like to look back a lot. I like to look forward, but I do like to look back in my life to see the times that God's been really faithful, because I think you can do that with relationships too, right? When you look at your friends or your spouse or, people who have been there for you during hard times, who you can count on.
Yep.
I do that with God. And to see his faithfulness in my life through really, challenging times, when you step foot in a dark place or a hard place, that is very motivating to know God has not let me down yet. And so let's go on this adventure together. I do think that God uses hard things in life to reveal things about ourselves, but things about him as well to us. And so that's really what I clung to. In writing the book, I tried to make it much more practical than maybe faith-based, because I think these truths are applicable for everyone,
Sure.
whether you are rooted in faith, whether you feel like you manifest things in your own life. I think even with the gift of life that God gives us, we all have this responsibility to wake up every morning and be good stewards of it and get to work and stick our beak in the ground.
Yeah. No, the book definitely does not have a religious focus. It is very practical, but I think knowing you and knowing how important that is, that clearly that I could, because I know you,
Right.
see how that kind of works its way through and is important in how making that all happen.
It is. And I think when you skip to the final chapter of the book, it really is about God's grace in our life. I think that's probably where my faith comes through the most. There's a story about a bird eating French toast.
Right.
And it's just such a beautiful visual of
Explain that, because it is a good one.
Yeah. So after I got laid off, my husband and I went to one of my favorite restaurants here in Dallas called the Biscuit Bar. And we were sitting out in the patio. Being unemployed, I divided my days into threes. I looked for a job. I learned something new. And the other thing I did every day was something that I couldn't do if I was working.
See, when you're saying three, I thought it was going to be, in my case, it would have been breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So
that's a lot of sticking your beak in the ground. It's a lot of work.
Yet again, you're showing that you're a deeper person than me to have this.
So we were at the Biscuit Bar and we were having lunch.
Okay.
We were having one of those meals.
Now you got me.
That was number 3 on the list. And I looked over and saw this bird who had just, the Biscuit Bar has this dish called chicken and not a waffle. And they take these biscuits and turn them into French toast. It is just divine.
Nice and decadent.
And somebody had left a piece of French toast out on their table. It hadn't been cleared yet. And this bird just flew over and went to town. And that stuck with me. There's a verse in the Bible, Matthew 6:26, that essentially says, like, look at the birds. They're not storing up their food. They're not planting. They're not, reaping, their crops. But gosh, God in heaven takes care of them. And how much more valuable are you? That, to paraphrase, obviously. But I remember seeing that bird and just thinking, you can get up every morning and stick your beak in the ground, but there's also this element of grace where sometimes things are just put in front of you that you didn't work for. And It just landed in your lap. And to me, from my roots of faith, some people might say, well, I manifested that. I made that happen. For me, I just think that's God saying, hey, you do your part every day to get up and be a good steward of this life, but I got you. Yeah. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of the birds. I'll take care of you.
Well, there's the question of, are you lucky or did you make your luck?
Right.
And sometimes you make the luck by, to use your phrase, sticking that beak in consistently, because eventually good things are going to happen. You're in the game. You're playing in the game, so you have a much better chance than sitting in your bed with the pillow over your head.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know one of the things in the book and in your life is this is all great, but unless you do something with it and it becomes part of the reality, then what's the point in a way? So I know in the book you have different questions and kind of action, but how do you take these things and implement it? We kind of talked about that earlier, but kind of maybe more focused on how do you make this reality? How do you move forward with these type of lessons?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I didn't want it to be theoretical. I didn't want it to be kind of pie in the sky. And so at the end of every chapter, I do break it down into just real things that you can do. I call them challenges. They're not really that challenging. They're just things that you can stop and take some time, think through things, put some things in action, a call to action. What's one thing you can do today to get closer to a goal? I've gotten a lot of great feedback about those challenges. In fact, I put a second book out there that is just a workbook that you can use to work through all of those challenges. But
that gives you a process to address these?
It really just gives you a place to kind of show your work and work through, maybe journal a little bit instead of just, some questions in the back of the book, but really a guided workbook to get through some of these. So you're not just reading a book and saying, oh, that was nice, great in theory, but so that you really can start applying it to your life.
Because usually if you just read it and say, kind of pat yourself on the head that you've read it, then you tend to forget it. It's like, how do you manifest that into your life?
Exactly.
It's such an important part.
Exactly.
Christie, thank you very much for being at the grown-up table. You're always welcome. You're furthest from the kids' table that I can imagine there. So thank you very much. Let's clear the table real quick. What you've just heard again is an example of transformation of how you, if you live your life, if you have character in your life, you can really make things better for yourself, but you're also setting an example for many others. It takes time. It takes a process. All these individuals that think it can happen just overnight, we'll probably find out that will be short-lived, that you have to really put the time in to make it happen. Really appreciate you participating in the Grown Up Table today, and hopefully see you in another one. Thanks.